and welcome to Michigan Main Street Stories. I'm Phil Ike, and today I'm in Charlevoix, Michigan, speaking with Charlevoix Main Street Director Lindsey Dotson. Hey, Lindsey.
Hello.
Before we start talking about Charlevoix as a city, as a main street, let's talk a little bit about you. Tell me your background and tell me how you became a Main Street Director.
Okay. So my undergrad was a pre-med degree, which is clearly affiliated with what I'm doing today. And I was terrible at all things related to medicine. And ended up in hospitality for a good long while. I worked at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island and their executive staff for a few years. And growing up, I always really liked historic architecture, but I had the impression that if I got a degree in history, I would end up being a teacher. No offense, but it was not something I was interested in. I don't like other people's kids, so so I ended up pursuing a degree that was essentially pointless for me. And then while I was working at the Grand Hotel, I discovered this other kind of career track with history, which was historic preservation, and met someone who had graduated from the program at Eastern Michigan. And when I unexpectedly lost my job, I ended up just diving into grad school and got a master's in historic preservation. So I went into that with the idea that I wanted to work in the skilled trades, essentially. My pie in the sky dream was like restoring barns, like for a living. I'll get there someday. But the reality of that is I was not getting a construction degree. And, you know, as much as I got trained with, you know, volunteer type work on how to do like historic masonry and, you know, just wood window restoration and things like that, it still wasn't enough to actually get a fruitful job in that field, especially as a woman. And so I ended up, I hated the idea of having an administrative job in preservation. It sounded terrible. But through the course of my years at grad school, I just did a bunch of internships because I was trying to basically eliminate things that I didn't want to do. And my very last internship was with the Main Street program in Howell, Michigan. And I was brought on by their then director to nominate their historic opera house for a local historic district. And I took the town through that entire process and learned a lot along the way. And meanwhile, observing what it was like to be a Main Street director and thinking, why would anyone want to do that to themselves?
What, because of the stress or because of the scope of work?
Just constant stress, always working way too much, weird hours, like people complaining at you constantly. I just thought, yeah, you're special, and I'm so happy you can do that for a living, but it's not for me. So then I graduated. I got a job at a lighthouse in Northport and lived on Leelanau Peninsula, and life was good, but I felt extremely unfulfilled because I was working at a historic site that was already very well preserved, and there wasn't a difference that I could make there. And so the person that I worked with in Howell ended up needing an assistant, and she begged me to come back, and thankfully I did, kind of tail between the legs, because I was like, I'm going to live up north, and this is my happy ending. And I'm like, oh, no, going back downstate to work in Main Street. And I remember the first time I went to like a director kind of gathering, because Michigan Main Street has our quarterly trainings, or used to before the pandemic. There was a portion of the meeting where everyone kind of went around the room and aired grievances. And again, I was like, this is tough. Like, these people are amazing, and I don't understand how they can do it. And I think after I went to my first Main Street conference, which was in Detroit that year, that's just like when it hit. I think that's when the Kool-Aid kind of like started going through my veins.
What was it about that experience that made you drink the Kool-Aid?
Just realizing that the job is so multifaceted. Not a single day is going to be like another. that you get to make an impact on so many things, not just historic preservation, but, livelihoods of families and, making good memories for people. And really just every day you're doing something to better the community that you're in, whether you love that particular task or not. I just kind of, all of a sudden I was addicted and I couldn't get enough. So so that's kind of the moral of the story. I got my first director job in a city in Metro Detroit, and I was there for about 2.5 years before the opportunity came open here in Charlevoix. And because I really wanted to live up north, I applied right before my husband and I were getting married, which was a terrible timing choice. I almost didn't apply, but
a whole lot of life changes happening.
Yes. And then I got it, and there we were, newlyweds, moving up north, and we've been here ever since. So I love it.
So tell me, imagine that I am a person who's never been to Charlevoix before. I've never driven downtown, anything like that. How would you describe Charlevoix to somebody who's never been here?
Surface level, it is one of the most spectacularly beautiful places that you'll ever see. Pretty much everywhere you look, there's a water view, especially downtown. We have an award-winning Best in America marina. And so there's a big draw for boaters because there's a lot of great access to an inland lake plus Lake Michigan. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in that realm. But really, the architecture is charming. Everything is, I'm going to say the word that a coworker of mine hates, quaint. But on the surface, it seems like, it's a lakeside town in northern Michigan. It is what you expect, right? A lot of Victorian architecture in the neighborhoods and things like that. But when you look a little closer, it's very locally authentic. And that's what I really enjoy about Charlevoix. We don't have chain stores here. Every business is a small business. Most of them are owner operated. And some of them are from here, and some of them chose to come here and invest. And it's a really close-knit, awesome place to be.
Yeah.
So
I drove in early in the morning in the early dark winter hours, and as I was coming into Charlevoix, the marina just sticks out. You can't miss it even in pitch blackness, just how beautiful it is. And you mentioned a little bit of uniqueness here in Charlevoix, that there aren't chain stores, that it's very much an identity to itself. And one of the beautiful things about Main Street just in America is that you have kind of this collective identity as a Main Street, but then you have different kind of applications of the Main Street principles and this idea, and those applications change based on place. That people adapt those ideas and those principles to their own city. And one of the things that in Main Street here, you have a program called Junior Main Street, and that's a program that not a lot of communities have. Can you explain kind of what that program is and how it came about and what it does for Charlevoix?
Yeah, so essentially we happily discovered a teacher in the high school that was willing to kind of let us come into her classroom and pitch community development to the students. It's appropriately an AP government class, so we're getting seniors who are, obviously a little more likely to be engaged in local civics because they're in that class. But essentially what happened is, our mayor, Luther Kurtz, he is a graduate of the high school and was kind of my in to introduce me to the teacher. And we kind of went in there, and I had attempted to start a junior Main Street program in the town I was in before, and it didn't really go that well. And so I went in there kind of not knowing what to expect, kind of pitched the Main Street model, kind of told them what we're doing, and basically opened the floor to, okay, so now that you know all that stuff, what do you think would make our downtown better for you? And really just kind of I wouldn't allow the adults to weigh in. It was their time to just give ideas. And the first year, they all identified a lot of things that either did exist or already happened. And so we identified a gap in how they're receiving information about our downtown. And so from that, they decided that they wanted to create an app that had all of that information in it so that they could access it versus a high schooler is not going to the Chamber of Commerce website to find out what to do for the weekend, right? So they worked on developing an app with a company, of course, and it's still alive today. And every year we've done the same thing. We're in our 6th year now, where we basically just go in and kind of like lay the groundwork for, okay, this is what's happening. Here's our goals. How do you see yourself fitting into that, and what do you want to do? And it has to be a project that can be done within the school year, because clearly they're seniors. We're going to lose them as soon as like May hits. And they have to do all the fundraising. They have to do all the work planning. They have to do the outreach and training with businesses for the app, for example. And the scope of the projects has been really incredible, because every year it's a different group. They all have different interests, and it's been incredible to see what they can actually accomplish.
It sounds like such a beautiful program, because one of the challenges our communities face is how do we keep kids here? How do we show them that they are valuable to this community? How do you show them the beauty of your place? And it sounds like this Junior Main Street program is a great way to stick their foot in the door as far as ownership, and really crafting not only how they perceive place, but something like an app with really essential foundational information sounds like something that any person of any age could tap into and use. It's not just the kids thing, it's a everybody can benefit thing.
Yep. Yeah, and all their projects have kind of been that way. And it's funny because most of the time when I see someone using the app, I mean, the thing's been downloaded to over 10,000 devices at this point. Wow. We have a big visitor population, so that's probably why that number is so high, because our actual population is not quite that big. But it shows that it's still useful 6 years later, which is awesome. And if I'm in a restaurant and I look over and I see a person on their phone like using the app, which I do see sometimes, it's usually someone who's like an AARP member. And so it goes to show that, like their work has benefited all walks.
Yeah, I love that, because sometimes we look at kids as they just do kid things, or they do simple things, or they just want to play on their phones. But what this is really demonstrating is that if you provide your kids with an opportunity to engage with their place, they can hit home runs if you give them that kind of environment to be successful. One of the challenges, I think, in a lot of our communities, it's always funding, right? It's we have dreams and we see needs, and we have all of these really great ideas that we want to pursue, but sometimes the challenge is we just don't have the resources for that. But luckily, we can receive funding in the form of grants and things from the state. And one of the grant programs from the MADC is Match on Main. Can you explain what Match on Main is and how Charlevoix has benefited from that?
So Match on Main is one of the best programs that has come out of the MEDC, in my opinion, because it is a grant program specifically for small business owners who are either filling a vacant space or growing in some way. And usually, and we're talking about like very small businesses, right? Like handful of employees, where usually programming is not touching on that small of a place. And it's just cold hard cash, $25,000 to help an idea become a little bit more stable and more successful, because being an entrepreneur is hard, and you never know everything you need to know, and most of the time people don't have as much money as they should. And so it's essentially a grant that, even though it comes from the state, we go through a local approval process for the businesses based on a number of criteria, including our local goals. And it's just great to be able to give someone that boost, either in the beginning or during a phase of growth, that they wouldn't have been able to get if we weren't here doing what we're doing with the relationships that we have. So in Charlevoix, we've been very fortunate. We've gotten funding almost every round since the program started. And so including COVID assistance, because they did change the program a little bit during that. We've had about 15 businesses touched by that funding.
Wow.
And so
that's a transformative amount of, especially in a smaller community, you funnel really liquid, necessary capital to businesses that need it at that level, 15 businesses. I mean, that's transformational.
It is, yeah. And especially in a town like ours, that the economy is very seasonal. And so it's especially hard to get going here, because you have to do well in the summer, and then in the good old days, it was normal for businesses to take out a loan at the local bank in the winter just to keep the lights on. Wow. I don't think it's that drastic anymore, but it just goes to show, you really have a hard time getting off the ground here, because you have a very few months to make all of your money.
Yeah, you got a small window.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give me a couple examples of businesses that have received Match on Main dollars?
Yeah, So one of the most recent ones is a cafe that's going to be opening sometime this spring, called Cafe Maria, and it is a young guy who moved from California. He was born in Michigan, actually born in Charlevoix, so that's his connection. And he's been a photographer and doing marketing work, and it was in the Bay Area and got priced out of living in that area, like a lot of people are right now, and decided to move to northern Michigan and open a cafe. Most people would say that's not smart. But here I am, endless optimistic for sure, to a fault probably. And I'm like, you know what? That's amazing. You are making your dream come true. And the whole reason why he wants to do this is because as a freelance person, he would find himself working in cafes all over the place, and really just kind of liked what that offered him. And he wants to kind of be that living room space for the community. So a lot of places in our town serve coffee, but many of them are only open until 2. And we have great coffee in town, but the after 2 coffee crowd, we're all kind of sad, at that point. And so, one of our very first surveys that we did, just to the general public about what kind of businesses they wanted to see, coffee shop has always been the top of the list. And what they mean by that is not just a place to go grab a cup, but the couches, the comfy, cozy, you can stay there and just be and not feel bad about taking up space, right? And that's exactly the kind of business he wants to bring to our cute little town. So yeah, he was awarded the $25,000, and it's going to help him buy equipment. And of course, he had personal savings that, he's been kind of racking up with this dream in mind. But when you get down into, converting what was a retail space into now an eating space, there's a lot of building code things he didn't bargain for, and having to install an ADA bathroom, for example. All of these things start adding up really quickly, and he's more than happy to have a little boost in the form of $25,000.
Yeah, so. and I love the fact that it is focused on small businesses, and small businesses in every sense of the word, because a lot of times you hear grant programs and they're huge numbers, and that's of course so necessary, but not necessarily accessible to somebody who is just kind of a startup cafe. They're looking at $100,000. Well, how do I even apply for a grant? I'm just trying to make good coffee for this city that doesn't have it, and it can be just so critical in the life of a community. Along with this interview that we're doing right now, we're also highlighting 2 businesses here in Charlevoix. And just taking a drive through Charlevoix, you see that it is full of so many amazing businesses. But can you talk about the 2 that we're going to feature?
Yeah, so Smoke on the Water is one. It's a restaurant that's been here for over a decade at this point, or it seems like maybe closing in on a decade. So she'll correct me later, I'm sure. But it's a small, everything is made from scratch breakfast place. They smoke all their own meats, hence Smoke on the Water, and SOW, sow is that it's pig. So they specialize in smoking meats. They make their own ketchup and barbecue sauce on site from scratch.
Wow.
Nothing is ever frozen. They're not getting stuff off a Cisco truck. And everything takes a little extra time. And the great thing about it is that it's located in this old house. Like, the building was built to be a home. And so it has that kind of charm to it because it's not really supposed to be a restaurant. You're in like a living room, right? And it's really small, but in the summertime they do expand outside and they have a lot of outdoor seating, and that they're on Park Avenue, and there's a bunch of really mature trees that create, beautiful shade, and it's just a very, very pleasant place that has incredible food. And Julie Mann is the owner, her and her husband, and she's just an incredible woman who is very gritty and has kind of dealt with adversity in ways that she shouldn't have. And she keeps killing it. Like, people, so recently, because of staffing shortages, they were closed like on a Wednesdays, I think it was, just to like give everyone a day off. And I happened to be there one day when a person came and like tried to open the door and they weren't open. And I could see like him kind of reading the sign, and he's like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "We came here just to come here." And I'm like, oh no. I hated the fact that he was upset and I wanted to help him. But at the same time, I was like, that's awesome, because he came to Charlevoix just to go to Smoke on the Water.
Wow.
Like, they're a destination in themselves. That's not. And they have, their group of regulars and then, first timers at all times because of our visitor kind of atmosphere. So yeah, I don't know. It's a great place, and they just got a grant through Match on Main for an expansion that will be really great for them because they're growing. And basically, because they're operating out of a house, their kitchen is less than ideal. So they're going to be able to kind of rearrange everything, get better equipment so that they can, reduce wait times and up production and stuff like that.
You get some home smoked food in a home. It just sounds like an amazing place.
And the fact that they're, in the morning they're smoking, and like the smoker's right outside the building, and it just kind of fills the downtown with that wonderful smell. It definitely draws you in.
It can't be beat.
No.
The second business is a business called My Grandmother's Table.
Yes.
Explain this business to me.
A lot of people, it's a fun name, right? So the business is a restaurant / cafe, because they also offer coffee and baked goods. So it's a bakery, cafe, restaurant. And the owners are actually from New York. Well, one of them is. And he grew up in a very diverse neighborhood and remembers as a child, his grandmother would kind of have like community dinners and just invite anyone from the neighborhood, and they would always kind of feature these different varieties of cooking, like Hungarian dishes and Polish and things like that. And one of the things that they identified, because they started out just as vendors at our farmers market, was that, as many restaurants as we do have in our downtown, they're mostly offering American food, right? And so they're like, we want to add to that. We want to diversify the selection for people. And so the concept behind My Grandmother's Table is that it's, open to anybody. And they feature dishes that are, basically global, like from all over, including Native American recipes, which is very pertinent to our local history. And they're just incredible people that chose to come to Charlevoix and do this thing. Like Joe, the person that you'll talk to later, he is a psychologist.
Wow.
And now he has a restaurant in Charlevoix.
I love it.
And it just, I think it goes to show that this is a great place to kind of make dreams come true. And they actually just expanded too into a space behind them to just have another area for dining and like private parties. And they just got their liquor license, so now they can offer that. And so it's great to see them growing as such a young business. And they too were recipients of the Match on Me program when they first opened up. So
wow.
Yeah,
there's such in both of these stories, there's such a a connection to history, whether it's a personal history, you know, eating from scratch food in a home, or it's you're living in New York and you're exposed to all of these different kinds of foods and their history as well, and all of that is here in the main street of Charlevoix, and that's such a beautiful experience for people, and one that you typically wouldn't expect in a smaller town. You wouldn't expect to have world-class barbecue, or you wouldn't expect to be able to eat authentic food from a variety of different ethnicities, and that's such a wonderful resource. Yeah. Along with Match on Main funds, a local business also received some funds from FHL. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so there is a bank out of Indianapolis that has a small business grant program that's existed for quite a while. And the local bank that we have here, Charlevoix State Bank, is a member of that bank. So they're able to apply on behalf of small businesses. I was just made aware of that program this year thanks to our connection with Michigan Main Street. And I was like, what? Like, this is untapped. Like, it's $20,000 that a small business could have. Like, why are we not going after this? And so I call their bank and I'm like, hey, like, do you know what this program's about? They're like, oh yeah, we've had applicants in the past, but it's never gone really well. And I'm like, do you mind if I kind of like hand feed you an applicant? Like, is it okay for me to find someone that's interested, who qualifies, and to help them through the application process so that once you get that information, it's good to go and you just have to submit it. They're like, by all means, please do, because that's been the missing piece before, is that someone's like, yeah, I want to apply, and then, you know, they turn in bad quality stuff because they're probably rushing it or don't know quite how to fill it out.
They lack experience in it, so they don't know what to do.
So we had a success story, and I was shocked because this grant is open to small businesses across Indiana and Michigan, and so it seems like the competition would be pretty tough. And a business that is not a brick and mortar business but operates out of our downtown, Mushroom House Tours, got the grant this year. And what that is we have these historic homes that were built by a builder named Earl Young, and they're called the Mushroom Houses because they kind of look like that. They're very in tune with the landscape and the natural surroundings. And what she does is she has a gem car, and she legitimately just takes people around to see all of them because it's, you know, they're private homes, first of all. So it's not like you can just roll up and they're all going to be in one spot and you can like go tour them and stuff like that. So she's kind of allowed people to access them with good information without also like making them feel like they can go knock on the window kind of thing, because that happens, unfortunately.
You have a crew of like 30 tourists all standing in your front yard looking at your home.
And it's been incredible because Edith Pear, she's an artist, but she also started this business just because she's a people person and loves to tell stories. And the 20 grand was incredible for her because she's been at this point where she can't grow anymore because a gem car can only hold so many people. And she, I think at the time, had 2 in operation. It's her and her boyfriend. So after she got that grant, she was able to add another one to her fleet. It has sides, so she can actually expand her season instead of just doing tours in the summer. And you know, she's also going to be like updating her website reservation system and things like that. And she was not able to get all of these other grant programs that have kind of come up through COVID because she's not a brick and mortar business, but she's still a business in our downtown, and she brings so much activity and vibrancy to our downtown. So it was really great to be able to bring another resource that has just kind of been underutilized for quite some time to help someone who needed it.
Yeah, so I love this story for so many reasons. Two of them being one, it shows that Main Street districts don't exist in a vacuum. That the city as a whole is your Main Street. That everybody has a part to play. That everybody can contribute. And so sometimes stretching a little bit, it makes a lot of sense because everybody can benefit, the small business themselves, the Main Street, the city as a whole. And then the second part is really one of the benefits of being part of the Main Street community, in that sometimes it's just a casual comment or a thought, or talking to a colleague and say, hey, here's a lead on some funding that you didn't already know about, and here it was in your own community, but somebody from another Main Street program lets you know about that, and they become the resource to help do a better job here for your own community. And I think that's one of really the strengths of that Main Street program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of other programs, Charlevoix is officially a redevelopment ready community. What does that mean, and what was the process of becoming a redevelopment ready community like?
So the Redevelopment Ready Communities program is another program of the MEDC, and really what it does is kind of lays the groundwork for a local government to be able to be as development/business friendly as possible. And so as you start to become engaged in the program, they send key staff to training. You get a whole bunch of kind of templates and resources that you can kind of model things after, just best practices for like site plan review, and just like how your website is or like laid out so that people can actually find the information they need, and just all the things that really go into a community being able to say yes to someone who wants to invest here. That's really what the program helps municipalities sort out. And so, of course, that is a complicated process locally. And MEDC, thankfully, does bring some resources to the table to try to help communities through that. For example, there are certain plans that you have to have in place. Like if you don't have a marketing plan, if you don't have like a kind of a public engagement plan, like all these different things, if you haven't thought through those processes, it can kind of be overwhelming. And so we did in the beginning, when we first became engaged, we got some funding to do our downtown plan, not to be confused with our tax increment financing plan. And that was a key piece for us. And so we worked with our Networks Northwest, which is a regional kind of council of governments type organization that we work with for planning. And yeah, they paid 10 grand-ish for us to go through that process, which was really excellent.
Wow, yeah.
And then most of the time, local communities don't feel like they have the capacity to do all these extra things that are needed to get certified. And so another great program that has been created through CEDM, which is the Community Economic Development Association of Michigan, is that they created a fellowship program specific to helping communities become certified. And so we got a CEDM fellow last year, and he was the one that kind of came in and looked at what we had gotten done and looked at the very long list of things we still needed to do and just started checking them off. And it was incredible. We got very lucky with who we were working with. And now he's working in Mackinac City as their, I think, zoning administrator. And yeah, essentially through having that one person just kind of focusing on the things that needed to get done, and identifying priority sites in town, and engaging all the different bodies, including some of our committees, our Planning Commission, DDA, and then City Council. Just having we can't do that on top of our regular day jobs, right? It's nice to think that we could, but there's a lot of distractions, a lot of reasons why it just wasn't getting done. So home run, we got certified this past spring, and since then, we've been able to tap into a group of very highly qualified professionals within the MEDC's umbrella that are helping us kind of move everything forward with underutilized space in the downtown. So the thing that's been interesting about this journey, especially for Charlevoix, is that, we're surrounded by water, especially the downtown. Like, we're kind of sandwiched between a few bodies of water, and a lot of people think that we are as built out as we can be. And really trying to get creative with looking at what we already have and figuring out how that site could just be better than it is. For example, we've got one property that's up right above our grocery store downtown, and it's a strip of offices with a big parking lot in the front of it. 1 story. That's it. We have a huge problem here. And I mean, it's a nationwide problem now, but it's been a problem here for quite a while. A shortage of affordable housing because we're a tourist community. And that is going to be a development that goes up, completely raises what's there because it can't be reused and it's not historic. Otherwise, we would be reusing it. And yeah, adding probably at least 2 stories and a whole bunch of infill onto a huge parcel, really, that overlooks Round Lake. And a mixture of units is going to be going in because you can have some really high-priced luxury units that have that water view. And then you can have the more affordable ones facing like the parking lot or the plaza. And it's going to add, a batch of housing units and new construction that this town has not seen in forever. And we've seen growth, especially through the pandemic, with people wanting to kind of slow down. And so this is filling a need that we needed like 10 years ago. And it's just an example of one of the ways that we can get creative with how we use our square footage that we seem to not have enough of. Right?
The redevelopment ready program seems like such an important program for a lot of our communities that might have, over the course of time, have a lot of loose ends that need tightening up, that they need some kind of expert to come in and some kind of expertise or somebody with experience to come in and say, here's a checklist, here's a template, we're going to help you, we're going to help move you through this program. And it sounds like really, really catalytic in the life of a community. From your perspective, looking forward, how do you see becoming redevelopment ready, setting Charlevoix up for a more successful future?
I honestly think it's going to be more catalytic than most people want to give credit to, just because we don't have a community development director, right? Like we have a city manager, and then we have me, and we have our zoning administrator, and our planner isn't even in-house. Like we contract out for that. So the local capacity, even though we've got a stellar team, isn't quite there to get some of these things moving.
And that's a similar challenge in so many of our communities. It's not that people aren't qualified or that they're not thinking of these ideas. It's just they have also a list of 150 other tasks along with trying to create a more vibrant future for the city.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, adding the what do they call themselves? The team, whatever that is, redevelopment sites or services team, that's what it is. That basically kind of expands our capabilities of working with the property owners, because I've been on the ground building the relationships, having the conversations of, well, what do you want this to be? What can we do to help you, kind of thing? And then I can kind of take that little package and give it to the team at that MEDC, and they take it away from there. And it's kind of beautiful. Like the project that I was just talking about, the person who owned the property, who was a volunteer of ours, and this past year passed away, and his family was left with this property and no idea what he had been doing with it, what his plans were, do we sell it, what's going on. And then we had like a community visioning session around the idea of housing there, and it ended up in the paper. And their attorney was like, why is the city talking about this property? Like, this is yours. Like, what's going on? And they're like, I don't know. And it turns out, I had been working with their dad, and he wasn't really telling anyone about it. And when they found out, they were like, oh, wow. Well, now we feel like it's our duty to keep it and kind of like do the thing that our dad wanted to do, kind of as a part of his legacy in a way. And so we have 2 of the kids. They're both like, one's in Seattle, one's in Boston. The mom's here. And, they have a really great skill set, but again, they're not local, so they can't like oversee a development. all of a sudden, we go from, daydreaming about what could be there to, yes, let's do it, to, oh, we have a local development team that's really interested in meeting you. And boom, like that's it. Like they're paired up and things are going to happen. And it took a long time to get to that point, but it's just kind of nice to have the connections that the state brings to the table because they've done so many of these projects in very similar circumstances in other places. Yeah. And they know who to work with because of that past experience. And so they brought in a team that they knew would be great for this project. And there you have it. Like it seems easy. They make it easy.
I love the word easy, and as you were talking, the word that kept popping into my brain was help, because I'm sure that you feel the same way within community work and as a community as a whole. Sometimes you just want something to be easy. Sometimes you just need somebody to come in and say, hey, don't worry about this. We're going to help you. We're going to make it easier. We're going to make something happen. And it sounds like that in this case, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's coming down the line, looking into the future, redevelopment ready. It's looking into what's coming next for Charlevoix. Yeah. And in your position, I'm sure that you kind of know a little bit of behind the scenes and things that are going to happen in the future. Do you want to give us a little sneak peek of any of those initiatives or campaigns or projects?
Right, yeah. So Charlevoix, I mentioned, is a very seasonal town, and our program has existed to this date to try to broaden or lessen the effect of the seasonal economy, right? So everything we do is to try to make the downtown a more year-round place, aka how many businesses can stay open and not have to take out a loan, right? We don't want people to close. I mean, some people they close on purpose because they want to be able to go to Florida or whatever in the wintertime, and that's fine. We're still okay with that. But most people, they want to be able to be open year-round and have it make sense. So, our program has shifted very drastically in the last 5 years or so, because we went from adding winter activities in the form of events to doing this redevelopment stuff that we're doing now and having these conversations that are really going to change the fabric of what our downtown is. And so obviously along the way, everyone kind of came together and said, the main way that we're going to make our downtown a year-round place is if we have more people living in it, period. And everyone knows, or everyone in this field knows, that the value of a person living in a downtown and like the economic impact that person has is pretty substantial, right? Like, let's ballpark it from a study that was done over 10 years ago and say, 10 grand per person, like, is coming into that local economy and staying in it. If you add more people that are here year round, not luxury condos that are going to have someone in them for a couple months and then they're going to be gone and empty, year round housing, then that's really the ultimate way that we're going to do that, because we can't keep planning events and trying to bring people from the surrounding area just for the day, because that impact is not like long lasting, right? But we can appeal to a lot of folks as a great place to live. And we do offer an incredibly walkable downtown that has access to, of course, like water, and pretty much all the services that you need. We have a grocery store, we have a pharmacy, we have an eye doctor, and all those not sexy things that, some downtowns kind of at one point didn't want. We have all those things still. And so essentially our role in the future is to incentivize people to create housing units that will be occupied year round. So we've created a program that's pretty aggressive, that is affiliated with a deed restriction on the property that basically says it has to be occupied 10 out of 12 months out of the year. And it's a reimbursement, but up to $25,000 per unit that we are willing to give to make that happen. So that the program just launched this year, and we're still, it's such a big conversation to have with someone, right? Especially a deed restriction, because that's forever. Like if they sell the property, that next person is also going to have to maintain that
Right.
year-round status. And it's really hard to battle, against the short-term rental thing, right? Like vacation rentals. Of course, that's more lucrative, but that's not what our community needs right now. So to really make someone make that decision that doesn't make financial sense at all, that's why we're kind of going big or going home, because it's the only way that we're going to be able to kind of really make those things happen. So,
yeah, and that's the tough part of being in a position like this, or really tackling these challenges, is that they are challenges, and they don't. Not everybody's going to say, "Yeah, this is awesome," but you can look at a community and you can say, this is something that our community needs, and this is the only way that we can ensure its long-term survival and growth. And speaking of challenges in our communities, one of the challenges over the past specifically 2 years is, how do we grapple with social distancing restrictions? How do we make sure that these businesses are put in the best possible position to be successful? And although placemaking has always been thoughts and it's always been around, I've seen over the last 2 years it really take on a lot of momentum on the grassroots level, in that people are realizing we can change our place, we can adapt it, we can really take ownership and shape it to become a community that serves our needs. I'm interested to hear about maybe a placemaking action that Charlevoix has taken and what effect it has on your community.
So the Junior Main Street program that we talked about earlier, they have taken on a handful of placemaking projects over the years, and all of them, I feel like, have been really transformative, just as a way to better act. We have a lot of space in Charlevoix. We have a lot of green space. Like our East Park is award-winning again, and it's just a big piece of grass, and it offers up great views and a great place to have a picnic, and to have your dog run around and play frisbee and things like that. But can it be more than that, without kind of ruining the line of sight that everyone values so much out to the water? Or we have the Pine River Channel, that is a channel that goes out to Lake Michigan. There's a lighthouse at the end of it. There's big boats that come through all day. It's a very great place to walk and kind of take in the scenery, but there's not a really nice place to like hang a hammock and just like be, right? And some of our alleys even in the downtown were essentially pass-throughs. Everything is very focused on Bridge Street. Bridge Street in the summertime is probably one of the most beautiful streets you'll ever see, as far as like there's flowers, everyone, like all the storefronts are pristine, the window displays are perfect, like lighting, the trees are lit, like everything is perfect. And then you get into the back of the parking lot area and you're like, ooh, we're missing something here. Because the focus has always been on Bridge Street. And so the projects that have kind of helped us reimagine how we use our spaces that Junior Main Street has done. Hoop Skirt Alley, that was kind of an alley, it was a placemaking project through and through, because what they did is they took up a pass-through walking alley and added benches, added a chess set, added some giant historic photos of our downtown so people could just stop and kind of have a conversation about, oh, I remember that, or isn't that cool? Electrocuted hot dogs is one of the signs that was in a window, and it's who knew that was a thing? Flowers and some memorial plaques, and it was a patronicity crowdfunding kind of campaign that made it come to life. And now what used to house a couple of giant potted trees that were half dead is a place where you constantly see people just hanging out. There's people of all ages, depending on the time of day. Sometimes it's kids. People let their kids go in the alley and they'll be in a store down the street. That shows how safe people feel here, which is incredible.
I love it.
But people will be eating ice cream cones. There will be old guys that gather and actually play the giant chess game. There's a Jenga set at one of the tables that's always getting played. The after bar crowd gathers there. I mean, it's just become a place that was nothing before. And that was a Junior Main Street initiative. How we can use East Park differently, especially in the wintertime. Let's start letting people sled there. Let's add igloos that are just open to the community so someone can get carry out and go hang out with their friends. And that is a very new initiative for winter specifically that we, it was a struggle to get there because people have this idea that East Park is like this sacred territory and you can't really have fun there. I shouldn't say that, but that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten lately.
Yeah.
And Junior Main Street's like, let's just try this. And it's been going so well. Like, people love our igloos. And it's not even that, it's not an original concept, right? Igloos are everywhere, especially because of the pandemic. But here, people are just like, oh my God, a thing to do in the winter that isn't like skiing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. Let's get our friends together. And then, they created a hammock park out on our channel, by putting poles up and chains and a sign that said, bring your hammock here and take in the day, just hang out. And all the things they've done have been accessible to anyone, no matter your age or demographic or skill level or ability level, you can still enjoy all of these things that they've done. And it's just been, it's made all of our little nooks that were kind of unused before way more interesting, basically.
Yeah, I think this example really shows the power of placemaking, especially in a small community, in that you have to be creative with what you have. And sometimes the reluctance of communities to really undertake any kind of placemaking effort, it's this conception that that's for big cities, that's for people with lots of money that can get lots of hundreds of thousands of dollars for grants and do all of this really creative things. They look at Detroit or they look at all of these other really metropolitan areas and they say, well, we've got 2 streets of a downtown. There's not much we can do there. From your experience, what would you say to a community that has that kind of perception of placemaking?
I would say, just take a step back and try to imagine, vibrancy. Just get all of those other perceptions out of your head and try to be authentic and to really figure out, if there's some aspect of your downtown that isn't serving the community, how can it? And most placemaking initiatives are not permanent changes, right? And so that's something that's great, is that you can kind of try things out, and if they don't work, it's not going to be there forever. You can adjust accordingly. If the pitchforks come out for whatever reason, because they will, a lot of these things are easily reversible. And so why not just try it? Just stop being scared.
Think simple, think small, think incremental, but be thinking about how you can fill the needs of your community by changing your community. Don't be scared by it. Take little small steps, and then as you get your feet under you and you start seeing success, then maybe you can start thinking build bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't need $5 million worth of capital to try to hit a home run.
Exactly.
Zooming things back a little bit on a greater scale, from your personal perspective, what's the benefit of being a Main Street community? How does it help you? How does it help your community at large?
It keeps it authentic and connected to the needs of everybody. I would say, not only the connection to the resources that we have and the ideas and all the people and their wealth of knowledge and experience, like the rip off and duplicate thing that we all do, has so much value to it. It's incredible. But locally, having the committee structure be an open door to anyone who wants to get involved without an official commissioner type status. It allows people to feel like they can be a part of something that is important and it is big, and they come to the table with experience and perspectives that there's no way any of us in City Hall will ever understand. And so, it takes it from being leadership like decisions and, council, approving everything to, no, this is vetted through all these people in the community, all these business owners are at the table, all, just random folks from the high school. Like it just kind of brings everybody together and gives them a voice that we need to listen to. And yeah, like cities are great at public engagement in the typical fashion of having like, open meetings and all that fun stuff.
Announcements
but it's not,
and things like that.
Yeah, but it's not quite what Main Street brings to the table. Like it's not quite the same. Like just meeting someone on the street and being like, yeah, you can be a part of this. They're like, okay, what do you want me to do? It's like, well, what do you want to do? Because we'll find some way for you to meaningfully engage with us, not just like help during an event.
Yeah.
But sometimes people do want that. So yeah, it just kind of keeps us real, keeps us connected, and keeps us on our toes for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of the local effect of the Main Street. For being part of Michigan Main Street, how does that being connected to Main Street at the state level assist you in your work?
It helps immensely. Especially in the last few years with a lot of the programs that they've created specific for small business assistants, different workshops that they have for us directors who, like, we need a lot of help. Like personally, there's not another person in your community that does the thing that you do. And so no one understands like that you have to answer to pretty much everyone. Like everyone's your boss. Like how can you succeed? And like, it's like the best of middle management, right? Best or worst, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. You have to make everyone happy. That's like the general citizen, the property owner, the business owner, council, your board. Like you have all these people that look at you and expect something from you, yet they don't understand what you do. And so it creates this weird predicament where you don't have someone to vent to. I can go home and vent to my husband, but he's going to be like, well, what are you talking about? Tell me about that thing. And I'm like, I don't even have the energy right now. But when I talk to a fellow Main Streeter in a town, say 100 miles away, they get it because they've dealt with it or they've heard something even more ridiculous and they can tell you their story and it can make you feel better about what you're dealing with. So Michigan Main Street has done really well with making sure the directors have each other and can bounce the ideas off of one another. And Michigan Main Street staff has been supportive too, but I would say the connection that we all have as directors in our state is super strong and invaluable at this point. So,
well, I just want to thank you for all the work that you're doing for your community. Charlevoix is beautiful, and it sounds like you're really helping set it up for even more success into the future. If people want to connect with Charlevoix in a little bit more direct way, how can they do that? Social media and other things like that.
Yeah, downtowncharlevoix.com is our website, and our social media, like Facebook and Instagram, are just Downtown Charlevoix, and that's essentially, those are the ways that we communicate with the world. So, and we have our app, which is called Life in Charlevoix, and it's free in the App Store and Google Play. So, yeah, lots of fun ways to engage with us.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. We've been talking with Lindsey Dotson, Director of the Charlevoix Main Street here in Charlevoix, Michigan.